Thank you. I have the most amazing guest today, guys. I have Cathy Heller. No, Cathy Heller is the queen of all podcasts, and I am like beyond thrilled that you're here.
I love you so much.
No, please.
Can I sit at this table every day?
Every day. I mean,
make me feel 22 feet tall.
Listen, you don't need me. You have how many? 4 million people who also love you that much?
We just hit 5 million.
Oh, excuse me. See, that's what I mean. 5 million. Pardon me. This girl is slaying every category in podcasting, and I mean, if I can have a mentor in how to do it right, it is you.
I feel this way about you. My husband. I left a meeting last week. My husband's like, text Jen, just see what she thinks about that.
Oh.
And she wrote back, and I was like, okay, I can breathe. I can live my life.
Go on. It is a love fest. We do actually have a love fest.
I think you're incredible. Well, I mean, and you saw this in me way before. Like, I was the girl, like, just coming LA, just starting out, and you're like, Kat, you've got the fire in you.
Well, not only that, what you have, you have fire, but you have extreme discipline, determination, and talent. Because
so nice.
No, so I think I don't know.
Very determined. Yeah.
Beyond. Because this is not your first entree into like entertainment, right? Like you are a super successful, what people maybe not know in my world, obviously in your world they do, is that you are an extremely talented songwriter and singer who's had a lot of success writing songs for lots of major network TV shows, commercials, like, was it McDonald's?
Walmart, Kellogg's, Keurig Coffee, Crate and Barrel, T-Mobile.
See, it can go on and on and on.
Yeah, and it was great because it helped me build a little bit of make a living, right? Doing commerce, doing something you love, that feels good, right? Paying the bills from having fun, that's a good thing.
But that's also an area, like you're going into areas that are like legitimately and genuinely very, very difficult to break in. And you're figuring out a way because you're super resourceful.
And you see this in me because this is you.
Well,
we only see in other people what we have in ourselves.
I thank you, and that's a compliment coming from you.
That is the truth. Yes, and that's why when we're together, we're like,
absolutely. Like I think that people gravitate to what they're similar to and appreciate those things. Because yes, I'm a go-getter, but I seriously feel like a wallflower compared to you, and I'm not kidding. Because
that's shocking to me.
Well, because number one,
you walked up to Keanu Reeves when you were 18, 19 years old, and you're like, listen, I need you to, not even, hey, I'm obsessed with you, and I just want a picture. You're like, no. I need you to help me. I want to be a VJ, and I need an interview with you.
That's true. I did that, and that was my kind of...
Who does that?
Okay, but I'll tell you something. People, that I did that.
It happened. That's a fact.
100%.
Know this story,
no,
audience?
they don't. They don't know this story.
You better get to hear that. Well, come to listen to her on my podcast.
That's true. So Cathy's podcast is called Don't Keep Your Day Job, and I talk all about my breakthrough moment of how I kind of felt like that was my moment that gave me the self-confidence and self-esteem.
At that age when people are not even comfortable in their skin to like go to high school, you're like, Keanu, come here. Call me tomorrow.
She's not lying.
And this is what happened. Then come to my house, we'll hang. And then it actually happened.
I know. Well, my mom made him lunch. We made a demo tape and I sent it in. Now, the moral of that story is I didn't get the job with Much Music, which is like the equivalent of an MTV in the US, but I was the runner-up. But what it did for me was it gave me that confidence to like feel like if you're determined and you want something bad enough, you should go and have that tenacity to go for it. Now,
amazing.
Good question for you is, what was your breakthrough moment? What was your Keanu moment, so to speak, that made you turn the corner?
That is such a good question. I've had so many of those kinds of moments. Like I remember when I was starting out in the music industry, and I'm like, how am I going to get my music to actually be heard, like by a person who actually could do something with it? And my friend Alex Benayan, who you probably are going to have on soon, he wrote a book called The Third Door, and he's like, there is always, always, always a third door. There's that first door, which is like the 405, which is jam-packed. Don't take that road. Go around it.
Absolutely.
Right? There's always another way in. Don't stand in the line at the club and go, I guess we're not getting in. Dude, go make friends with the guy who's like working over there and go talk to find a way in. So I always knew that, and I've done that at every point in my career. So in the music, one of the first moments was, okay, first of all, I'm going to pick up the phone. No one does that anymore. It's like, pick up the phone. Oh my God. So I was calling Ogilvy, McCann, Saatchi & Saatchi, 72, calling ad agencies. People were like, who are you calling? What are you saying? And I'm like, it's okay. You can be a human being, right? And you can assume this, like, be a friend, be casual. You know what people want more than anything in the world? Enthusiasm. When a person is enthusiastic and vulnerable and excited about something, that's all you need. You don't need 6 college degrees. You don't need to have written a book. Just like, that's what you did that day with him. You're like, listen, I'm so passionate about this, getting this part. I want to do this. And that vulnerability to be able to do that. And he then says, like, cool, another human being who just shows up. 99% is that showing up. So I kept feeling like I got to show up and I got to find different ways to show up. I remember one time I made this thing called Mochas in Music, which was like, I'm not good at graphic design. I don't know anything about it. I just went on to the computer and I made this thing, and it was like a picture of a girl playing a guitar, like a little cartoon girl. And then I put a plus sign, and then I put a picture of a Starbucks Frappuccino, and I was like, step 1, what's your favorite Starbucks drink? Step 2, tell me a date and time to drop it off in your office. Step 3, I'll show up and leave you caffeinated with some music. That's it. So I sent it out.
It was brilliant.
It was like so scrappy, amazing. Like so scrappy.
Yes.
Sent it out to like 65 or so people. How did I find them? Because you Google it, you find it. We have the internet. It's the best time ever to be alive. It's like they didn't have this in 1974. It's analog. So I found email addresses, send it out. A bunch of people don't respond. Some people are like, no. And then like 27 people were like, sure, mocha frappuccino. And I'm like, cool, does your assistant want something? Yeah, that's really nice. Definitely. Get her a vanilla latte. Cool. So I show up. What does it cost me? $10? Walk in, and I was really empathetic. I didn't walk in assuming I'm gonna have like a 16-hour meeting. I was like, what's up? I told you to bring coffee. So cool of you to have me. Here's your coffee. Here's some music. Oh, by the way, is that your kid? Cute kid. I'm gonna go. Just be a human.
Right.
People were like, sit down. So some people had me sit for 5 minutes. Some people had me sit for 45 minutes. We just chatted. I became friendly with these people. And then the music was ready because I had worked my butt off on trying to figure out what they actually needed. And that's a big breakthrough too, because the difference between a hobby and a business, I had Seth Godin on my show. He said the difference between a hobby and a business, radical empathy, right? If anything's going to be successful and you want someone else to pay you for your thing, you should care about them, right?
Absolutely.
What is Apple doing all day long? They're thinking about you. Who's walking in? What do you eat? What do you like? What color? What makes you feel good? What do you need? Empathy. We live in an empathy deficit. And I think that empathy, being able to communicate with humans, you're so good at that. Let's go back to that moment with him. That's what that is. It's like, hey, I'm Jen. What's up? What is that? The breakthrough, the miracle is you knowing that you're worthy to say hello to him. Because who the hell is he? He's another human being, right? Like when you strip back who we are and you go back, right? Before you had hands and feet and a brain, what were you when you were conceived? You're just this life force. You're just this splash of abundant energy. Like I was just listening to Deepak Chopra, who I just talked to yesterday about being on the show. And he was saying, he goes, when you close your eyes and you think of a forest, it's just abundance, right? You close your eyes, you think of like creatures, just like the moss and the dew and the ladybug and the dragonflies. There's so much in there. He goes, then you close your eyes, think about an ocean. It's so abundant. It's just water for miles, deep, sideways, this way, that way. And what's the sea life look like? Oh my God, it's just like gushing with abundance. Because then you close your eyes and think about yourself inside of you. So much abundance, love, compassion, passion, energy, enthusiasm. That's it. That's your value. Cash in on that. Like that's the stuff.
See,
right?
How you do it though. It's like you said, it's number one, it's having a personal touch, right? Like you figure out a way to connect to someone beyond just a text message or an email that really kind of sits and resonates. What you're great at and what you just said, it's infectious because of how you do it. Like the way you just explained this whole thing to me. We all have
that. I'm saying that's what when there's a crowd of people scramming to get to him, because that's how you were like, we were outside of this concert.
Or your thing.
People. It's always like that, right? There's all this noise, but when somebody is planted in their skin, and I'm not perfect, and it's okay, and I don't have shame around it, I'm going to bring all parts of myself to tea in the morning. My meditation teacher, she's like, when you have tea in the morning, invite all parts of you. Invite your self-destructive part, invite your broken part. Guess what? Your messiness, that's your message to the world. only way you help someone is because you've been down there and now you can bring them out. We've talked about that.
Yes,
the stuff we've gone through in our lives is a little bit similar. That's actually a gift for me. You know, Tony Robbins I heard him the other day. He was like, there's no straight lines in nature. Nothing. There's nothing like that. Everything has edges and curves and jagged. That's good. That's what helps you actually fit and do your thing. So it's that. That's the miracle. That's the miracle of your life. That's your breakthrough is I'm worthy. And then I can actually show up. So then when I'm in a sea of people and they're all clamoring for this guy and I'm like, Keanu, and I'm here, right? I'm not like proving myself. I'm not masking it up. I don't have it all together. I'm just Jen. Who's that? Right?
Right. No, I get you.
People are dying. You could walk into Warren Buffett's office. He could be having the busiest day in his life. If you take your seat at the table and you have vulnerability and you're present, there's presence, and you are enthusiastic and you have something to say to him, he's going to listen. He's going to go get this guy a job, get him a chair. Let's go.
Oh, absolutely.
Everyone's ready for that at all times. That's the rarest thing.
I agree with you. And I think but you have that in leaps and you have something within you in leaps and bounds that obviously resonates and it's infectious because of the way you just described that. Some people don't have that ability to be that passionate about what they want. Some people are like, they know what they want, kind of, but they don't have a natural, innate way to kind of figure out how to do it. So I guess my question to you is, how would you tell somebody who's not quite sure how to do it, or like, how do they find it within themselves?
Yeah, it's a really good question. See, the thing is, there's like an ocean. There's an ocean you have to cross, and it's actually an illusion. You know, like it's not even there. But the ocean is all the crap that you've been told or taught, and it's all an illusion. Like it's you grow up, and there's like the days of wet cement, right? Where like wet cement, you put your finger in it, it stays there, it's an imprint. So when we're kids, oftentimes either someone is telling us something that's not true, but they're indoctrinating. You're not enough. You when you grow up, you're gonna have to settle, or your dreams don't come true, or working hard. Yeah, it's about you have to pay your dues. Let it be easy. Like it's actually the universe, God. It's supposed to be easy. But we make it hard because there's so much resistance to the self and to the hunches and to the whispers. You follow the whisper and know it's enough and just go with it. And you're not worried about it failing and falling on its face. That's the thing. It's all a process of exploration. When we had Angela Duckworth on the podcast, she talked about how your thing, whatever your thing is, she goes, you don't discover it. You develop it. Have you ever walked into a preschool and seen a 3-year-old who's not messy? No, they're all messy.
Yeah, they're all messy.
You and I don't know. How many things have I done that just fell on their face? I don't even remember. I'm on to the next thing. I'm like, let's keep going. Who cares? It's part of the discovery process. So that's about letting go of the shame. So that's what it is. There's so much we fill ourselves with. There's just so much shame. I don't have it together. I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. People are taking antidepressants left and right. It's like, there's just so much of that in there. So that's what we have to acknowledge and say, first of all, could I maybe dip my pinky toe into meditating a little so that I can notice this swirling storm? That's not myself. It's like, you're not your thoughts. Thoughts aren't facts. We all have, 70,000 thoughts a day? I just heard Eckhart Tolle say something like 98% of your thoughts, you've had them every day, and they're garbage. They're useless. So what we have to do is we have to find a little way to get into here, which then distances you from the thoughts, and you see them pass through the mind like clouds. Storm clouds, they pass. Sometimes you have a yucky feeling, sit with it. Okay, let it in, acknowledge it, and then it will pass. It'll do its thing, right? So this is where we get stuck. It's like we constantly are resisting all this stuff that's going on. So I think that the first thing that has to happen is bring the darkness into the light. Acknowledge it. Instead of saying I'm great, I'm good, I'm gonna go on Facebook, I'm gonna go on Instagram, I'm perfect. Stop proving. So how about the vulnerability of I don't have it all together. Dear world, I'm anxious sometimes. Boom, now you're at number 1.
Well, absolutely.
Everyone's in on that. Do you know what I mean? Let it be easy. that isn't that even that big illusion, that mess of illusions that you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to sort through and tease out, and you will get better at like stopping believing in those things, and you'll start to feel your power, and you'll arrive home to yourself. Great, you'll do that. But in the meantime, even all those like self-doubting thoughts, bring them into the light.
Right.
And then they don't have any power because everyone goes, me too, same. So it's all just being made so much harder than it has to be.
So do you think that social media is good for that or bad for that? Because I think that what social media does is it makes everyone feel less than a lot of times, because people are only posting their most beautiful pictures with the filters and their best moments.
Right.
You know, what you do, you give people inspirational messages that are not like, it's okay to be okay. It's okay not to be okay, or to be not to be okay. And I think there are people who are doing it now. Maybe, what do you think? Like, what's your idea of all this?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that it can't, look, it's a tool. It's powerful. You know, in 1987, I didn't know what the person next door to me was doing, let alone the person 7 houses away. Now I can find out what everybody's doing in a second, and it's not real because most people are going to post like, I had the perfect lunch, I had the perfect date, I have sex every night, I look great, look at my lips. It's like you're using a filter, you know,
Exactly, yes,
so what happens is then everyone's comparing themselves, and meanwhile you're comparing yourself to something that doesn't even exist. So that's a problem. And then what happens is we compare our behind the scenes messy life to this person's perfect life, and and then we get this like false sense of reality, like, wait, why would I even try? Because this person's doing it and she's brilliant or perfect. I'm not that like that. It's like, no, because you're not seeing the reality of it, right? So that is a big problem. At the same time, what if we used that platform? What if we used our space in that landscape to shine a big light on the imperfections? Now, oh my God, here's the thing. Again, going back to what I was saying before about walking into that moment with Keanu, or me walking into those agencies, or how I showed up in the podcast space, it doesn't take much to stand out if you're willing to drop the shame and tell the truth.
Right.
That's when it's like, oh, Kath, I'm not saying anything. I'm not doing all I'm doing is telling the truth. It's like, I'll post something sometimes on Instagram. I'll be like, so anxious right now. I'm so overwhelmed. I just want to like put on fuzzy socks and watch Netflix. And everyone's like, same. I'm like, of course.
Right.
They're like, I can't believe this. I'm crying. I'm like, what are you crying from? I'm crying because I just want to meet another person. I'm in a storm. It's hard to be an adult. It's hard to be a human being. We're mortal. We know that. There's loss. We want so much to have meaning in our life. We want purpose. We have to overcome all the self-doubt. We have crap in our family past. We have so much on our plate. It's like you just want someone once in a while to show up and be like, I see you. I know how hard this is. We're all in this. There's no, like, when my grandmother passed away, my husband said, like, we were both crying, and he lost his dad when he was a kid, so he feels grief in like a deeper way. And so I looked at him and I said to him, you've known this story since you're a kid that people die. He goes, yeah. He goes, the one nice part of it is that like no one gets out of this alive. Like there's no island where someone goes, oh yeah, I got around that. Like there's a way out of that. And it's just you two and you're the one. He's like, we're all in that. There's like a humanity. Same thing with the struggle of like within a day, let alone a week, everyone's feeling everything. You feel overwhelmed sometimes, you feel scared, you feel anxious. Why are we not talking about that? Why can't we talk about that? That's why Brene Brown like shot up like a rocket just for saying like, hey, I don't always feel great, and is that okay? Yeah, there's actually so much strength in that. That's what I'm saying. We have to let it be easy.
Absolutely.
It's easier than we make it. Just show up and be yourself, and it's enough. And then what do you do then? You give other people permission to be themselves, and they're like, thank God you showed up because now I can be me, and we can all stop trying to put on the perfect hair and it's like we're doing our best,
right?
That's it.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it is fear-based. People are scared to be their authentic self, and because of that, then all these other problems come to be. But with you, okay, so you had this. So you basically, that was your breakthrough moment. I got you. And then how you kind of pivoted into the space, like you had a very successful career. You did.
Right. I broke through. That was my breakthrough into advertising and TV and film. So that year I got like 27 placements. Every one of those people gave me a spot on a TV show. I remember.
You got all of them?
All of them. All of them. All of them.
Holy crap.
But we're talking about 5 years before that of being dropped from 2 record labels. Interscope dropped me, Atlantic Records dropped me. I went and got like a real job, wore a pantsuit, and did all that.
Oh, but you did?
Oh,
I can't even imagine you doing
that.
Seriously?
What was I doing? Yeah,
where were you working?
I was working in Brentwood for a guy who my sister met while she was at the Cheesecake Factory, and he was like, "I need someone to work in my commercial real estate office."
Oh my God, I can't even imagine.
And you know what? But that was so good for me because I was working around people who literally woke up every day for money, and I realized how much that sucks. Like, I just didn't want to like make money.
Right.
I want to make something.
Right.
And then make money as a result of adding value. So, but I made money, was able to then save money to go and, work on music stuff and write music full time, which was really smart and cool. And I knew that. I was like, oh, I'm going to let this day job be my investor. And I'm going to do this day job while figuring out a way to do the music DIY because I was dropped from the label. And we've talked about this. People often think you need to be part of a machine. You need to be hooked into NBC.
We're going to talk
you got to
about
be hooked into Atlantic Records. It's like, we live in the best time ever. You got Wi-Fi, you're good. Go make stuff. Stop waiting and make something. So
absolutely,
that job actually helped me a lot. And I learned how to, when you're working commercial real estate, everybody is like, no one's afraid to pick up the phone, have a conversation. And anyway, I learned a lot from that. But I did that. Then I broke through with the music thing.
But you're resilient. So what you did was you got dropped. And that happens all the time, by the way.
God,
people get
all the time.
Especially, this is like, that's what I'm saying. In that business, it is extremely competitive and cutthroat. And you can have a great contract with a great label. And then next thing you know, they don't do anything with you.
It's a business.
And you're shelved. Exactly. It's a business like everything else.
Yeah, they have to know they're going to sell records.
Right. But the funny thing is, though, so you're resilient. But your record, like your music is really catchy and it did well.
Well, wound up doing well in
even without the
TV
label
and film. And that's what I wound up getting back into after I quit my job and then started working on that full time. And I was using my cold calling skills. Everything, you always look back in your life and you see how everything actually helps you. Like I was editor of my college paper. At the time, I wanted to like reach out to people on campus and uplift them. And it helped me learn how to write. And so that I look back and I'm like, that experience was helpful. And I was a C student and like that helped me really find my way also, was just like taking that job on. And that
you're I'm not to interrupt you, but you're very high in your emotional intelligence because no, it's true.
I've been in therapy a long time.
But maybe that's helped.
Spent a lot of money on it.
But you know what? It's obviously helped you.
It helped me. Yeah.
But I think though you have a very high EQ, and that is what you said. I agree with also earlier, which is you could have 100 degrees, but if you don't have a high EQ and you can't be resilient and resourceful and connect to people in a real way that's authentic, it doesn't matter how much you have.
And everybody can do that. We have to start spending time giving ourselves permission and showing up for ourselves and getting a little quiet, which is why people brush their teeth twice a day. People should be meditating twice a day, even 5 minutes. Like there's so many easy ways to do it on your phone, on an app. It's so easy.
Is that your thing now?
Yeah, I started that in 2007 at the UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center. That's a long story, but that was like a Control-Alt-Delete on my life in a lot of ways. That helped me a lot. Yeah.
And so how much are you doing it now?
I try to do that every day.
For how long at a time?
Even if it's 10 minutes, sometimes I can do 30 minutes. Sometimes I can do it in the evening also. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld meditates twice a day. Ellen meditates twice a day. Phil Jackson had the Lakers meditating every day.
Can I tell you something? I'm like obviously very new at this whole podcast thing, but I will tell you almost every single person I've had on has said that they have meditation as part of their daily practice of habits and rituals.
Because you wake up, you grab the phone.
100%.
And now you're in. And it's like, and it's like we need to get a little space to figure out like, what do I really want to lean into? What am I going to intentionally sort of work on, and what's really me, and what's these thoughts, and where do I stop and those thoughts begin, and which ones are true and which ones aren't. I mean, and after a while you notice the garbage and you go, oh, okay, there's that thing again. Okay. And you don't react as strongly. Also, it lets you feel sad if you want to feel sad, and then it kind of passes rather than like avoiding your sadness all day long and then taking it out in like destructive ways or trying to self-medicate by not noticing that you're just feeling overwhelmed. So yeah, I do think that that's really helpful. But for me, I wound up going back, and then the breakthrough was the music thing. I started making a few $100,000s a year licensing my music. And then after a little while, I just knew, and again, I love this. I love teaching this message that like, there's so much more to us than one thing. Look at you. You've written books. You've been you've done TV, you've done speaking, you now do a podcast. And who knows, right?
Like I'm gonna have you
you're
on every
so
podcast.
much bigger.
My ego, this one. I'm telling you.
No, but like and it's like what we don't do is I think we want so much to be known. We don't like the unknown, and we want to control. We want our brain, our mind, our ego wants to label things. So we're like, who am I? I'm Jen. I do fitness. It's like Jen has a lot more to her. You know, you're gonna wind up being a mom. You're gonna wind up writing books. You're gonna wind up motivating people to be high achievers. There's so much. So for me, after doing music for a while,
God, I love you.
It's true though, and it's so true.
Yeah.
So, and I love that you let it in. That's when you say I love you, that's the part of you that's going, yeah.
Well, because I love you because you're so infectious and you are so inspirational and aspirational. And I'll tell you, because we'll get to your thing right now, because I'm only here doing this podcast because of you.
Yes.
You know that? And you know this because we were having breakfast. And I was telling you about this show.
I completely know that. I kind of know it.
Oh, well, you're like.
I thought maybe it was a piece, not like a whole.
Well, no, 100%.
I love this.
Okay, 100%.
Because you have so much to give, and it's just like another avenue. I mean, you're already giving a ton. It's another avenue.
Now, listen, I appreciate everything you're saying, and I was saying to you, I was draining you a cup, which means like I was like basically
oh my gosh, you're speaking Yiddish.
I am speaking Yiddish.
I love it, of course.
Well, you know what I mean? Because I was like going on and on about how this show didn't work and how this and what do I do? You remember I wanted to create this whole thing about habits and rituals and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, what are you waiting for all these other big corporate people to like help you do it? Why don't you just do it yourself? You have the power within you. If anyone can do it.
What you just said, everybody, it's like everyone's waiting for the wizard
to
come along, right? And they're gonna give you the whole thing. Clive Davis is gonna meet you. You're gonna sing in the back of that. You're singing in the back of that church choir, and he's gonna be like, "I'll make you a star, kid. I'll put your pictures." It's like it's done. Like that's not happening. But what is happening is you can get busy making things. And if you get to be that squeaky wheel and you keep trying things, I promise you will be led to the way that you can serve the world, especially if you do that. What I was talking about, what Angela Duckworth said in her book, Grit. And she was on my podcast and loved it. She's like, love that. Just develop it. You know, when scientists go in the lab, they don't have, you don't set yourself up for defeat by saying, I'm going to do this one thing. And if this doesn't work, I'm done. You're already done. You may as well not do anything, right? Because it's like, that's not life. That's not how it works. I went through 15 rounds of fertility treatment. I have 3 kids. So do the math. How many miscarriages? How much garbage? How many hormones? How many months of like feeling like I was a raving lunatic? A lot. Also, in that experience of going through fertility treatment, I saw what a miracle it is. Not just to get pregnant. A lot of people can get pregnant. Sarah Silverman has a great joke. She was like, well, I was thinking about having kids, and I realized the best time to get pregnant is when you're a teenager.
It's true.
She said, no. So the point is, it's not always that hard to get pregnant for everyone, but the miracle, the lottery is that it's you that becomes the person. Because the amount of potential humans that can be created.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's not infinite, but I think it's 1 in 400 trillion that it would decided to be you out of all the DNA that was swimming around in that moment. How crazy is that?
I love how you have all these stats on top of it.
Well, 1 in 400 trillion. It's like that might maybe make you think like there might be a reason, you know?
Absolutely.
So I feel like the fact that we're here, it's like we got to get busy making stuff. And we live in a time like no other. Like as long as you have running water and some Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you're good to go, basically.
Like I have a friend recently who's like, Kath, I want to sell a show to a network. I'm like, what's your show? And she shows me the show. I'm like, no. Like you live in a time where it's so easy to prove a concept that if you haven't proved the concept, why are they going in on that?
Yeah, so true.
Go out and prove it. You don't need them. Get to a place where you put it on YouTube, you put it on Instagram, you put it on IGTV, you put it on Facebook Watch, and you now have this many people. Now go to them. And then, why do you need them now? Why do you need them? Like, they're going to come after you. But I don't even get it.
It's because, where everyone's, I think there's a fear factor here, right? People are scared to kind of push through and do something on their own. I mean, I had it. That's why I was sitting with you being like, I don't know. What do I do about this show? And you inspired me to be like, you know what's the worst that can happen? You have the power within you.
Yeah.
But you're very good at that. Like, that's the thing. I think that at the end of the day, people have to just like try and be okay with not maybe succeeding the first time. right? And just knowing that they have the power within them. So what I want, okay, so explain with
There's
you.
room for everybody's light too. I think people think there's no room. It's like,
Right.
there's already 1,000 blogs on this topic. There's already 1 million podcasts a week. So what?
100%.
Because there's 7.5 billion people on the planet. How many people have you met in your life? How many? Thousands.
But that's what I said
How
to
many
you.
people do I actually want to have over for dinner? You and like 4 other people.
Oh, thank you.
So like, my point is like, there's people that are your people. There's going to be a podcast. You're going to be like, I like that. This is a similar message to this podcast. But for some reason, I don't like this girl. I like this guy.
But that's what I said
That's
to
just the way it
you
is.
about your podcast, right? But
Right, everyone, there's some people who are like, she's not my flavor. It's like, great.
okay, but the question then is like, how do you? I mean, things are cluttered. And you have to kind of push past that within yourself and feel like you can make a difference and you have the power within you to kind of create. But then there is the reality, which is, okay, now you have a lot of competition to stand out. So if you are someone who's authentic and if you are someone who has something to say,
Right.
then what? Like, you're a perfect example. So
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
How do you stand out?
How do you? You just said it. How do you stand out,
First
Kathy?
of all, going back to that like radical empathy, that's huge. How many people, if we really go back and now think about what you're hearing or what content you're absorbing, how much of it do you really feel is like somebody who's like worked really hard to like curate a perfect persona, and how many of those people are you really feel them, right?
Very few.
Very few. So why is Oprah? Because she's cried on almost every episode, right? Like, she's like, hi, here I am. Like, here I am. When she's excited, she's excited. When she's sad, she's just not coming out of her nose. And there's something about that. People are like, oh, okay, that's me. So recently I heard, JP Sears, he does those like yoga videos.
Yeah.
He's so funny. But I heard him on an interview. It was so interesting. Somebody said to him, what makes something go viral? And he was quoting all these statistics, and he was saying something about how what makes something go viral, it's not how informative the video is or the blog. It's not how entertaining it is. It's how much you're reflecting the feelings and thoughts of the people who are watching or reading in that. When we see ourselves reflected back, we're in, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where, when we can let those things be a part of the conversation and the discussion, that's where things start to really heat up and you start to stand out.
That's
because
so good.
Now you're separating yourself from everybody else. One thing I love about Apple is that the culture there, it's not about people who think that they're in the coolest, place in the world. They're hiring people who very much, the culture is very much about we're the same, we're equal. So it's not a pretentious culture, which is cool. They're
That's good to know.
like that. So I really loved the people who I connected with, and we just connected and we stayed connected. And I was very respectful of that relationship. I didn't just like send them every episode, and I was like, what would I send them that? And I think I had to grow, and so certain episodes they featured, which helped a lot. And they just featured us as the #1 podcast of 2019, which was
unbelievable.
Amazing.
Amazing is an understatement, my dear.
I know, it's amazing. I mean, I showed my husband when it was on the podcast homepage, and my husband's like, it's cool. I was like, it's not cool. It's like winning the Kentucky Derby of podcast. It's like, it's like, it's so validating, and I feel so grateful for the opportunity. I mean, I get emails from people who are like, yeah, what you're doing is literally making a difference in my life. So good. That's what I want to do.
Absolutely. I mean, that is beyond a feat. Like you said, it's like, it's more than winning the Kentucky Derby, because how many podcasts are there? I would say there's how many? Hundreds of thousands?
I think there's 1 million a week uploaded. 1 million uploaded a week.
1 million. And
like
you were number
different
one.
Podcasts.
Do you understand? #1.
It's amazing.
It's beyond. But that just is just a testament to who you are.
I started in my closet.
I know.
With nothing.
No
network.
I mean, nothing. When I did your podcast, remember, you're like, you threw even that. And that was like, by the way, that was only like, let's say 6-7 months ago. So you were already at like the tippy top of that. You literally threw me a microphone. You're like, hey, sit down over here and let's just do it. Like, it was super just who you are. You're like barefoot in your house. And I was like, okay. And I sit down and I'm like, all right, here we go, But like, that's you. You're being you.
Because it's the conversation.
It's the conversation.
I feel like people spend so much time and energy
I
on
know,
the bells
it's so
and
true.
whistles. It's like, just get to what's actually
It's absolutely
important. You can get your laptop, plug in a microphone, sit in your closet, and you can make something amazing. Just if you can just let go of the shame, like, and just talk and just tell the truth and just know that people are going to support you in this world.
Or hope to, but I mean.
Oh my God, people work so hard to earn love and to earn respect. It's like, you could actually just, be yourself. And it's amazing how other people will be like, thank God, I'm like that. Thanks for being someone who has the bravery. It's like such bravery to say that you're anxious. Like, we're all freaking anxious. How are we not talking about that every day? How is every conversation not a little bit talking about that?
Well, especially someone, I mean, like you, like me, we have like a family, we've got kids, we have so many things we have to balance. It's really hard not to be anxious when
you live in a time where there's like this pressure, especially for women, where now, after Women's Lib and the place that we're in, it's sort of like, of course you're going to be able to make 7 figures and be a great mom and eat organic and be mindful. You can do it all. It's like, how about you can do it all and then you can have a nervous breakdown? Like, of course you can do it all. Of course you can do it, but could you happily, respectfully, healthy in a way that you can actually be happy? No. So let's talk about how difficult it is to balance all that. And for women who are breadwinners and all, I mean, there's so much on our plate, right? At the same time, you're still a human being, just like, you want your husband to tell you look pretty every day. Like, there's just a lot going on.
Right, exactly. No, I think that's you're absolutely right. Like, how much time though, because of this? Like, first of all, I want to ask something else. Now that you have a successful podcast, you have a successful music career. We didn't even talk about how now you're helping. You've been helping all these artists who are talented but don't have a way in.
Right, been helping
them.
Do
you want to first talk about that, or can I?
Whatever. No, I mean, that's just one thing I've been doing is helping songwriters find a way in. And so I started a course. I started that when I was pregnant with my 3rd daughter. She's now 2.5. And I didn't know what I was doing. But I was like doing all these workshops for songwriters. I was speaking at the Billboard Film and TV conference, and I was in a few big magazines. And so I was getting, Variety did a full-page story on my music career, and the title was like Writing Her Own Check. And Billboard did a story, and it was like, she's the guru of this and whatever. So people started reaching out. And I did a few people's podcasts before I had a podcast. And artists were saying, could you help me? Can you help me get my music in? And so I started a course, and I was pregnant, and my kids were home that summer, and I was tired, and I woke up early, and I was like, let's just see if I could put something together so that I could connect with people all over the world. And I go live just for my course a couple times a month, and I hired a team to help me. And the course made, 7 figures, which was great. But
yes,
30% of those students started getting licenses, BMW, Lowe's, Lexus, Coors Light, Starbucks, a bunch of TV stuff. It's just been so cool. And then we have all these beautiful testimonials, people saying like, this wasn't just a course, like this actually changed me. And because of them, I want to give them credit, because one of the girls in the course was the girl who said, Amy Loftus, she's like, you should start a podcast. And if it wasn't for that course, I wouldn't have started the podcast. And every single thing everything leads you to the next thing. And that's what you don't know. It's sort of like saying to yourself every day, you got one question. It's like, how am I going to serve? What value do I have? So we have so much value. We've got so many arrows and so many quivers. There's so much here. There's a treasure trove. Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of waking up and just being like, let me try this. You never know I didn't even know what a podcast was 10 years ago. And if you asked me 15 years ago what I wanted to do with my life, I would have said, I want to sing. I want to tour the country. I want to be like Sheryl Crow. And I would have had blinders. And Jenna Fisher, when she was on the podcast, she said something so smart, because she's obviously an actress and her husband is a writer-director. Mm. And she's like, we both came out here around the same time. And I was, she goes, look, I fought and I worked and I got to where I am. And it wasn't an overnight thing, but it happened for her within like 6 years. She got to play Pam on The Office and her whole life changed, but she worked for that. She goes, my husband, he comes out here and he went to a great acting conservatory. She's like, it just wasn't happening. And she said, I respect so much that at some point, one of his friends said, we need someone to write a short film, and he decided he'd write it. And then he got a lot of good praise. Mm-hmm. And he didn't say, I'm an actor. My ego can't handle that. He was like, let's do this. And then he started to become a successful writer-director. And she's like, and that takes trusting that your work, it will find its way out. But sometimes this isn't your work. Like, I was sitting at Sunset Sounds with Ron Fair watching Lady Gaga record Paparazzi when I was signed to Interscope.
Oh, wow.
And I knew it wasn't my place. I was like, I don't have these chops. I I write good songs. They're good. They're sweet. There's room for them, but they're not like, I was like, this is not my work. Like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I knew it. And I was like, felt like such a fraud and my heart would race.
Really?
He took me to the Ivy one night and I'm sitting with him and I'm like, not me. Like, I knew filling up those stadiums. And then there were some comments.
How? You were so talented and you had the
Because
chops.
I already
you write
knew
millions of songs.
because I knew there was like Kathy who has confidence and we're talking self-doubt. And then there's where it's not self-doubt, it's like a knowing, because we were having conversations about like where the vocals had to get to and the coaching and the training I had to do for that and the stamina. And I had to work on my like live act and like and I was like, I get it. And I just sort of knew. And I also then felt, I knew why I really wanted to be on that stage. I really wanted to do this. I didn't know how to say it, but when I graduated from college, I was like, I want to be a minister. I mean, I'm a Jewish girl, so that probably wouldn't have worked out. I wanted to do
a rabbi.
I wanted to do something like that, and I didn't know what that looked like when I wrote for the school paper. So when I started saying I want to be a pop star, it was because I didn't know any other way to tour the world and spread a message. There was nothing else modeled. And so then I'm sitting there and I'm going, she's incredible. I was like, this is her. Like, oh my God. And he was like, yeah, for years she's been sitting here as a writer for other people. That's what she was doing apparently. And then finally someone listened to one of her songs. And for years people were like, your songs aren't good enough. And then finally they took a chance on her. But I was like, no, she's going to go the disc. She's incredible. Right. And I knew like, we're just not in the same lane. Like they're different. And thank God I got dropped because at the time it sucked, but it led me to this.
Right. So you pivoted, but you always had like
constantly,
but you obviously like you succeed in almost listen, you've had success in writing music, building a business to help others. So it's kind of like a label, more or less. Like it's
a little bit like a publishing company.
Right, like a publishing company.
Kind of.
Then you had success, of course, with the podcast. So what's next? Now that this podcast is such a success for you.
So fun.
What do you pivot to, or how do you expand?
Yeah, I want to expand it. And this is the thing. Someone said to me the other day, so what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, I don't do that.
Okay, what's your 6-month plan? How about that?
You know what it is? It's like, it's just a matter of getting in the current and staying in the flow. Mm-hmm. And
momentum?
When you're in the flow, things just come, the right things, and you trust that. So you don't put blinders on it by saying, this is where I'm supposed to be. I heard Oprah talk. I went to her Super Soul Sunday taping about a year ago, and she was talking about this book she loves called Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav. She had him on apparently like 35 times.
She did. He was a big guest of hers. Yeah.
Right. So she says, why do I love that book? She goes, because it was the first time I realized what my path was and what the answer to that question is. What's your goal? What's your plan? And she talks about how in that book, he talks about how there's a mothership, which is God. That's what he says. And then there's all these little ships. And our job is to point our little ship in the direction of that mothership, right? And get in the flow of like how we serve, what our job is to help serve this beautiful universe. And so she goes, and you just point yourself home. That's it. You just point yourself in the direction of home and the right things come. And she's like, and that's when everything changed for me. I was like, I'm just going to point myself in that direction and I'm just going to serve and it's going to come. And that's our job, right? Isn't that powerful?
It is powerful, but I'm much more like, where my head goes, I'm like, well, what direction are you going to be pointed? Are you pointing here? Are you pointing there?
I think as you check in and you ask yourself, like, what really feels like the work I want to lean into? Like, where can I really add value? And sometimes you don't know right away. And so it takes like trying 4 things. And then the world is merciful. It lets you know. It'll be like, no, it wasn't so. Like I wrote a book on songwriting in 2013, wrote the whole book, pitched it to a bunch of, nobody wanted it. I was like, okay. Not
really.
Yeah, and then I look back. I'm like,
what songwriting? Like
how to be successful as a songwriter. I look back. I'm like, yeah, that's not my thing. Then I started a podcast in the closet 2 years ago, sitting on the floor, and within a week, I get an email from this woman. She's like, I work in publishing. You should have a book. And then it was like so easy. And then she came to me, and I signed my book deal.
That was then? That's the book that's coming out next year, right?
In November. God, why does it take so long?
It does take a long, long time.
But yeah, it's finally written. It's done.
So that woman came to you right when you started your podcast?
After the first episode, I get an email. She's like,
so it wasn't even because of the success of the podcast?
No, she was like, your voice, what you're saying, this has to be a book. And it just was so it's like, if it's the right path, it's like picking up this cup.
Yeah.
And if it's not, there's gonna be resistance.
That's amazing. I didn't realize that was the same.
It took so freaking long. I wrote it, then it wasn't good. I had to write it again. Then my editor, she got fired from the company, got a new editor. She was good. She pushed me to be better. Finally finished it. And then, funny enough, Martha Beck, you know Martha Beck?
Yeah, well, hold on, Martha.
She's like Oprah's life coach. She has 3 Harvard degrees. She wrote a book called Finding Your North Star. She's great.
I know these names because the Oprah. I know whenever they're affiliated with Oprah, the names are like floating in my head.
She's so great. So funny enough, I had gone to see Oprah another time. I've only seen her twice. Once was the time I just said at the Super Soul taping, and then another time was 10 years ago. She did this thing called Oprah University, and it was up in San Francisco. And Susie Orman was there, and Nate Berkus, and Martha Beck, and her.
Right, all her favorite.
I think Marianne Williamson. I don't know. I think she was there.
Oh.
And so, yeah, all her favorite people. And she came out at the end, which was amazing. But Martha Beck was there. I remember walking out of the conference and crying, being like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life, but I just feel so, it was amazing. And then 10 years later, you get these photos pop up on your phone, like, here you are a year ago. Sometimes I have photos from 9 years ago. Sometimes I only have photos from 3 years ago. But whatever it is, on this day, for whatever years I have photos, it shows up on my phone. It's like, these are your photos from this day. So I go to interview Martha Beck, and I'm walking in, and I see photos today, last year, today, like 2 years ago. And then there's a big gap. And then there was a picture from today, 10 years earlier. And I was walking out of Martha Beck's talk. And I said to her, I was like, I just realized 5 minutes ago that a decade ago, to the day I heard you speak, cried my eyes out, and now you're on my show. And she wrote a beautiful blurb for the book. And I was like, that is so wild.
That is wild, actually.
Because you're out there. It's like a jungle. You have no map. Nobody hands you directions and goes, take a left turn, then use this hashtag, then email this person, then write this blog. No, it's just a freaking wild, wild west. But what's amazing is that if you have a vision about what you want to be able to do, and you just have some vision, even if it's not the ultimate thing, if you just put your right foot forward and then your left foot and keep walking toward it and don't stop and keep trying things and don't stop. My friend Susie Moore, she goes, the road to success and failure, it's the same road. One's just longer. It's like, how many times do you fall on your face? You don't care. Things work out that I'm doing, even though there's a ton of things. Like I had a show at one point that I worked on for 2 years with Henson, and it was mindfulness.
That's right.
We went to every network. Everyone said no. So there's been lots of things that didn't work, but
it's also timing too. I was going to say
there is timing. There is, like, Malcolm Gladwell talks about that. There's like right place, right time, but then like being prepared when you're in the right place and right time.
Right.
But there is this idea that I do think is like, even when things don't work out, I think the reason why a bunch of things do, it goes back to just like unbridled enthusiasm. Everyone wants to be around that. Mm-hmm. And that comes from knowing that you're freaking enough, even when you feel like you're imperfect, because everyone is, so you go join the party, and being vulnerable. Nothing good has ever happened in the history of humanity without someone being vulnerable. And vulnerability doesn't have to be like telling everybody your sadness. It could be sometimes just wanting something or starting a podcast or putting yourself out there. Mm-hmm. That's being vulnerable, right? That's like taking a chance. Like, people love to sit in the back and hate on people like you and me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Why don't you come on over here and do it?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I love it when people like comment. You're there. That's like, people like tear Gary Vaynerchuk apart. It's like, tear him apart. Okay. First of all, you're not paying a tax to him. It's not like part of your, like, so let him, you can turn it off. Like, why hate,
I agree.
And second of all, like, that takes tremendous vulnerability for him to put himself out there. And do you remember how he started with his little folding table? He's like, this is Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm selling wine. He was like,
he a wine? Yeah, he was a wine guy.
Started with a YouTube show. Like, he didn't have a good haircut. He didn't have good clothes. He didn't know what to say. Like, that takes vulnerability. So I do think that if people can really get that, and they can be vulnerable, and they can have that enthusiasm come out of you and know that you're enough, you wouldn't believe what you can create.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think, but I do agree, but I always hesitate because I feel part of it has to be, you have to have the internal desire and tenacity to want to do it something like that. And that's where I always like struggle. I hate saying yes, Kathy, you're right, to anybody, because I feel like you do need to have that like go get 'em kind of like I like stop at nothing attitude. And I don't think you need to be born with it, but I do think
you have to curate that.
You have to curate it. And I think that and I think it's like it would be it would be a disservice and not real if I would just be like, yeah, right. You just have to have enthusiasm and you have passion.
Yeah,
and
you
go,
do have
go
to
do
push.
It.
You're really good at like knowing how to, in such a, and there's a fine balance between being assertive and also just being someone likes being around. Mm-hmm. Like there's like, you don't want to be like in people's face in that kind of way.
And annoying.
There's something to that, but you're right. I do feel like people think that they will be more productive if they just had more hours, or if they, had a little more time, I think that you're right. I think that productivity comes from that like state of mind where you're ready to rip it open. So I think you have to figure out what's going to push your buttons. Like for you, I think you're naturally a little bit like that. And then also you're working out, and that's really good for your mind and really good for endorphins. So you guys should get on Jen's program. I think that could be one thing that helps you. I think because a lot of times people who work out and athletes, they tend to start to cultivate that in themselves. And what else? It's like, what else? Just like we have an iPhone and everyone knows where your battery percentage is, right? Like at any point in the day, if you're at 17%, once you're at 9%, your body is literally, you start to actually feel fatigued. You're like, I got to get to a charger, right? Everyone feels that anxiety. So
it's so true.
We know that about our phones, but we need to know that about ourselves. And I think that just like you said before, where you said most of the people you've had on have a meditation practice, I think that most people who are successful and high achievers, they have a consistent practice in their life to get themselves into that state. And if you have that state, now you can like dive in and get stuff done. And so it's a matter of figuring out, just like your iPhone needs that juice, how are you going to plug in? And instead of just hoping you're going to have that state, kind of proactively knowing like you're probably not, because something stressful will happen. You haven't been sitting on a mountain meditating for 17 hours a day. So you need to proactively plan to make that a habit.
Absolutely. And I think
that's part of it. You're right.
You said that perfectly, because I do think, and that's why I think people should construct their lives like I have, to like create habits and rituals that kind of like help them with their pitfalls in life, right? Because like if you have certain places that you kind of are like flailing or failing with, create an environment where you're not going to fail, because you can't rely only on willpower or motivation. I don't think, because those wane after a while.
100%.
So create like a path that you can succeed, and if you, like I said, and that's really kind of digging deep and knowing yourself and knowing what you're good at, what you're bad at, and like kind of like making it work within that, That's what I think. So say, don't keep your day job is hurt.
Called Don't Keep Your Day Job. You're the only person who says it correctly. Everyone says it the other way. Yeah, don't keep your day job. Do your life's work. You can find it on iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher or whatever. And then you can DM me on Instagram. I'm a freak. Like I literally read and respond to every message.
What's your handle?
Oh, it's just at Kathy Heller, Kathy.Heller.
Kathy.Heller.
Yeah. And then you can find me on Facebook group. We have a really supportive group there. It's really lovely how people go on there and they're like, this is what I've always wanted to do. And we haven't had any issues with like trolls. Everyone's just like, I'm so proud of you. Like there's a really supportive community where I encourage, a lot of Facebook, they're like, don't promote yourself. I'm like, please talk about what you want to do here. And then people come on, they're like, I've made this, piece of pottery, or I'm opening up a donut shop. It's just really lovely. Everyone's supporting each other.
Amazing. And that's why that second podcast you're doing should be more than just a second podcast.
Am I doing a second podcast?
You said a second podcast a week where you're getting people who are users, or listeners.
Second episode?
Yeah, like with how they've like taken information that they've learned from your podcast, from your guests, and then implemented it and applied it to their own life, and now have success. I think that to me
so amazing.
is a big thing, and that should be exploited more and bigger, and do something with it. You know what I'm saying? Wink, wink. You know what I'm talking about.
Cool.
All right. Thank you. I love you. Mwah. Bye.
So fun.
Say bye.
Bye, everybody.